Hello, this is Marian Penna coming to you from seemstobeso.com. Today I'm bringing you a lesson in Electric Quilt on how to create project files that you can share on your blog or your website, or even to sell if you choose to do so. One of the important things about creating your patterns and your blocks and such is that when you go to create the EQ7 file, or if you're not in EQ7, whether you're in EQ4, 5, 6, whatever version, it's important that you save them first to your library. Yes, you have the P7E file, which will also save those blocks, but once you compress them and get rid of any unused blocks, let's say for instance, they will be removed from your sketchbook and you might possibly lose all your work. So it's really important that you take your blocks, especially any blocks that you created and those that are not EQ blocks in particular that are saved in the EQ section libraries, that you take and you save them to your own. Now, all of my blocks have been previously saved, but I'm going to show you what I mean. Let's say I had not saved this block in particular. I want to take and now open up my library and come to my block libraries. I then want to go to what is my library, and we'll see what opens up here first. You can kind of see all of my libraries. But I want to open up, I know you don't have to do this prior to, but I like to open up to the library where I'm going to save to, and that was at Easter. So I want to find Easter. I'm going to show you here. As you can see, it's already saved here, but I'm going to show you how to save it as a precaution. So you come to your sketchbook and you highlight the block that you want. Now you can, if you have several blocks you want to highlight, you can press your control key and highlight the blocks you want to save. Then you can take and choose copy. I'm just going to do this one. So here's this. I'm going to take it to my library. As you can see, because I pre-opened to the library I want to be in, I then will paste it into place. And yes, it has made another copy. The important thing afterwards, now if you switch, it will ask you if you want to make your changes permanent, and you can say yes or no, and then it will tell you that you have saved them. This is the one window I wish EQ didn't have, because it gets tedious when you're doing a lot of blocks at once and wanting them in different sections. And every time you go to change libraries, it asks you, if you make the library change, it asks you if you want to save to that. And it does that twice over again. However, if you take and you had just pasted this in, you had clicked on paste, and then you went to save library, it would just tell you that your library, your blocks had been saved, and you wouldn't get two dialogues. So you can keep that in mind for a future reference. It's important that you save your blocks to your library, because like I said, otherwise you might lose them from the P7E file that you create when you are creating a new project for Sketchbook. I didn't test that theory, but I have lost blocks before, so I'm assuming it's because of how they were saved. Now I put together this tiny little project of blocks I've made over the 2.5 years or so that I've been working in EQ now, and so this was just for this basic lesson today. But the idea is that we're now going to take, I have all these blocks. You can see that I have these blocks in the motif tab and the blocks tab, and you can see that there are blocks listed here that are not in this project, and this is what I want to show you here. So you can take and you can quickly do a little save on your P7E file, but then when you're ready to take and save your project to the size, you first want to compress it. And the reason why we compress your file is because if you have a lot of different fabrics, all of that adds up to megabytes and megabytes of fabric that you don't necessarily need. And let me show you here really just quick. I'll go to the block tab. I will pull a block down and I'll go to my color tab. And as you can see here, it's going to show me all the fabrics that are available for me to use if I were to add more to this project file. And so basically speaking, this is showing all of the fabric in my default palette, as well as any fabrics I might have added. So I think actually this is just only the default palette, to be honest. It hasn't added any of the extras, but that's okay. If you had added extra fabrics, they would be listed along here. So essentially speaking, while I don't know what size this is right now, if I were to compress this down, it will change how many fabrics appear over here. So I'm going to take and do this. I'm going to delete any unused blocks, fabric, embellishment, pictures, and threads. Now this takes away anything that this project file does not use. So any of the blocks, any of the fabrics, embellishment is like embroidery designs, any of the pictures that were saved when you drew, say, an applique design or added a photo, and the thread colors are removed. You also have the option to choose just delete the fabrics only. Most of the time, this is the option I choose to use, is to just delete my fabrics. But in today's case, I'm going to delete all of the blocks. Now there is another option too when you're in your sketchbook. If you know, for instance, that you didn't use this block, you could come down here and click delete and it would remove it from the sketchbook. And you have to do this several times, all of the different colorings. That can get very tedious if you had a lot of different colorings. So doing it here makes a little bit more sense because it will do it for you all at once. I'm going to show you what I mean. So it should now have compressed this, and it's taken out all the blocks I did not use and all of the motifs I did not use. And if I come over here just real quickly to the applique and then come back to my color tab, it's kind of like a refresher. You have to go back one tab and then come back to it to see how the fabrics have refreshed. This isn't the case when you're adding fabrics. You don't usually have to. It will auto refresh when you've added fabrics to the sketchbook. But for this lesson only, I'm trying to be really quick. So as you can see here, it's lowered the amount of fabrics that are used in this palette. And then once you are ready, you can take and you can export your project as a EQ7 file. And you can list it. I'm just going to give it a name, 2015-sample lesson, and that's all I need to put. I could put my name or my business, and usually I do that. I will usually add a STBS dash to my file names as well, somewhere along the line, so that at least my name is there, and for me that tells me that's from Seems to Be So. Most of the time when I download stuff, people have not bothered to tell me where a file is from, and it doesn't matter if it's a quilt file, it doesn't matter if it's an electric quilt file, it could be a machine embroidery design from a freebie that I've downloaded. I mean, it will be like filename.zip, and even in the zip file they haven't included any copyright information. This is extremely frustrating to me because I cannot believe people would go to all of that work and not add any copyright information. In your sketchbook, when I create a design, as you can see here, my design is listed with all the information I need. It tells, I always put my name and my website URL first. I put the copyright info, who the artist was. I I list why I made it, and I list the date I created the file. That's just a little info for me because I like to see what I've done, you know, sometimes. And when you list the references, especially in Electric Quilt, I would be able to later go and do a search for just the word 2015, and that should bring up all the files I created in 2015. I think that's pretty cool. So I purposely put the year on all my reference lines as well so that I can find out what I did during that year. Didn't always do that. It just came to me, I think, late in 2014 that maybe I should be adding the year to what I've created so I know what I've created and when I created it. So I really work hard to do that now. And I think it's important, even if you never share the project file, that you still put the copyright info because, as you know, it can help you to know, say, the artist. It can help you to know what you created it for. Filling in the note card just gives you that information that you really need to know that block later on down the road when you go to use it. It's also good if I haven't done it in the quilt yet, but if you take and you list it for that. So I would put here 2015 lesson sample, and then I would just put created for sample lesson on creating project files in EQ7. I could list the reference, but I don't have a lot of quilts in my library to really warrant doing that, so I don't really do so much with reference lines in that. And I will add all info can be found in blocks section, because that way I don't have to refill in all that info again. Now, if I were doing this for a file that I was sharing on my website, like when I do a block, or if I have sold the block I haven't sold very many Electric Quilt files, but if I were, all that information would be on the quilt as well, because depending on how I'm going to use the project file, it really depends on how I fill out the note card file. But since I make blocks to sell, I don't really make quilt projects to sell, make blocks to sell. I make sure all that information is on those blocks because I think that's important, and also it respects the artist and their copyright information that they want also. So I have a lot of respect for artists because there are a lot of artists who will, but not every artist will allow us to create beautiful patterns with their artwork. So I really appreciate those who do, and I try to make sure I give them credit. If you've ever seen one of my PDF files, you know I give credit everywhere I possibly can to the artist because I really do appreciate the fact that they have given us permission to use their artwork to create patterns from. So with that in mind, once you have that done and you've saved your project, you can then go and let me open this in my Explorer and I will show you the project file it's saved to. I'll be right back. Okay, so here I have a sample of the PJ7 file and the P7E file. And this is the difference. When it was a I copied it over. So when I originally had it saved, it was 4.5 megabytes in size. And that's before I compressed it or did anything with it. After the compression and saved it as a PJ7 file, you can see the big difference in the megs. And if you were sharing this, let's say, as a Club EQ project at the doyoueq.com site, they're going to want you to compress it as much as possible so that when you send it to them, their email is not overflowing with huge files. So that's why I would encourage you to learn how to compress your files and save them as project files instead of the original P7E file that is created when you make a new project. So that's it with this lesson. I can't really think of anything else that's important at this point. Like say, fill out your note cards. Remember to save those blocks first over to your libraries for your blocks or your quilts, and any fabric as well that you might have imported for your project. You also will want to add that to your fabric library so that when you pull the project in from Sketchbook again, it will bring that fabric with it. That's something else you want to keep in mind. So I hope I've taught you something today, and I will see you again soon with another lesson. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye for now.